Good evening. This is Exabu delivering you the news of the invasion of Norway. What about France? France will be the main topic of this video, but I'd like to handle two little points first. One, the Norway missions. Which one is easier? Which one is better? And my answer is, if you're looking for a prestige efficient and easier way to handle Norway, go Norway South. It's absolutely easier, and Norway North is a challenge, and more experienced players should try it at least once. Both of these missions are remarkable in terms of how well they showcase the new and improved core slot system of the game, in that the focus is on customizing your core force for each mission instead of doing something versatile like you did in Panzer Corps 1, where you were actively discouraged from buying a unit or a type for just a mission or two, because you would run out of prestige and you really need something versatile that worked every time. Norway shows that it's not true with the new game, and you really have to forget about all those tanks, about recons, about ATs, about most of your planes actually, because it's Northern Europe and the weather is terrible as usual. So when building your core force for Norway, make sure you have enough specialized mountain troops and buy 7, 8 or even 9 mountain infantry units, and supply them with enough artillery, and 7.5 centimeter guns will perform excellently here. They don't take up much space, they're extremely cheap, and in hilly and mountainous terrain, their range is 3 hexes, making them absolutely stunning for this. And go ahead and try those missions. With this in mind, it will not be that difficult to crack them. And now on to the second thing I would like to talk about before the main feature, and it's the difficulty at which I'm playing the game and the commander perks. You see, this is not my first instructional video on Panzer Corps 2, and by far it's not the last, and I like you to know the settings on which I play in all of them. Let's look, shall we? So the main difficulty level is general, so minus 30% to all the prestige I get. I have set combat randomness to 100. I like those really dramatic losses and really dramatic gains. I have set custom army on because, well, why not? It's only relevant for the first mission. And finally, I'm playing with race against time, which is the equivalent of Guderian in Panzer Corps 1, which means that I get docked 5 turns off my timer in every scenario. The commander perks I use generally reflect my playstyle in Panzer Corps 1, so I've really gone for something I'm comfortable with. I've chosen no over strength because I'm not a fan of it. I was not a fan of it in Panzer Corps 1, and I really wanted to free up some of the points in the positive perks, so I have chosen Panzer General to reduce the core slot cost of the tanks. I have added Operational Initiative, which is a guaranteed +1 on all initiative, and actually a bigger one on earlier turns, plus the Master of Blitzkrieg, which is a must-have for anyone interested in tank warfare in this game. So you get faster tanks and, most importantly, tanks that can easily cross minor rivers. And this is it. Let's get to the big question. Is it Belgium or is it Sedan? Answering this question is slightly more complicated than for Poland, as I believe that both the Sedan and Belgium branches offer interesting choices, whereas if you play it right, Sedan is slightly easier. Belgium is more diverse strategically. It offers more variety of objectives and actually forces you to change your core forces, so it's also interesting. Plus, it gives you a bonus in a certain subsequent mission. I'll make a summary of the advantages of both these branches, as well as the amounts of prestige you can get from the flags and the maps in the end of the video. And now let's get to the missions, and let's start with Sedan. Have I ever told you that upstart Manstein is a complete idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about? Yeah, send tanks into Baston Forest and hoping that will be paradise on the other end. How stupid can you be? Seriously though, while it really worked in 1940 and almost worked in 1944, this is not a good way to complete this mission. Because, well, scenario designers know that it worked, and you know that it worked, and scenario designers know that you know, and obviously they've introduced placed a bunch of obstacles just to make the map interesting. There are defenders in the forest, there are defenders near Sedan. It's a very difficult river crossing, so it's very cramped there. So please don't use that route at all. Just send a recon unit to capture Luxembourg, send a few troops towards Bastogne, a couple of infantry and artillery units will be more than enough, and send all the rest. You should have 8 to 9 tank units in your core force for this mission. Send them all the way in the north, because that little village is the only defended place up until the River Meuse. It's not defended at all, it's just a clear plain. Much better than the defended forest, wouldn't you say? Don't forget to get a bridging unit to easily cross the Meuse River, and just advance from there. You will see how your tanks, like your hordes of tanks, break through towards Philippenville, and just have this open plain. Despite some of the tanks that defenders have and some of the counterattacks, you will be unstoppable in Philippenville and then on to Sedan and elsewhere. You'll just take it all easily in this mission. Let's continue to the Channel coast, and one of the advantages of this mission is that you won't have to change your core force from Sedan at all. And speaking of core forces, I would also like to mention the new tanks you get in France, specifically Panzer 4D and Panzer 3F. I urge you to use Panzer 3F because Panzer 4D is very infantry-oriented, and it's rather useless in France because you get many tank counterattacks and very few infantry just standing out there in the field. So Panzer 4D is pretty much useless. Panzer 3F is reasonably good against tanks and is pretty well defended for what it is. So please choose Panzer 3. Now on to the mission, and the main thing you have to keep in mind playing this is the River Somme. Very important World War I and very important now because you shouldn't cross it. There are 2 groups of enemy tanks gathered around Arras and south of Péronne. Getting after them at the same time from the very beginning of the mission is suicide. You shouldn't do that. You should keep to the north of the River Somme, defeat the tanks that will counterattack at Arras, take Arras, Cambrai, Péronne, take all of those towns, and advance west, but don't go south of Somme. Once you've taken Abbeville, by that point you will have most probably killed most or all of enemy air force, and you will be pretty safe crossing the river at Amiens and attacking that tank formation in the south. Past that, proceed north to take the remaining objectives, and south if you've got the time and forces to take the secondary ones. Now on to the second branch with Belgium, and I must talk immediately about how the briefing is lying to, gushing about how you should break through those defenses and cross those rivers. Bollocks. If you trust the briefing, it looks like a big infantry scenario, which it isn't. This is really a tank scenario, and the north of the map is key to this, because it's a plain and it's not protected at all. You can send your tanks up to Antwerp, quickly take it, make sure you have some pioneers, and then cross the Dema River in the south and just advance to the plain southwest. All while your Fallschirmjägers and your infantry cross to Liège. It's not so difficult, but the main role should be played by the tanks because in the southwest there is a big tank formation waiting for you, including the first sighting of Char B1, which is extremely nasty. Once you handle that, continue with the pincer movement surrounding Brussels from the south where they don't expect it. Please don't rush through those British-held villages because it's pretty difficult there. Take the scenic route and win. And finally, the last mission, the key today, Dunkirk, which probably is my favorite of the 4, and is actually an infantry battle. It will force you to change your core force from the tank focus of Belgium to a more infantry and artillery focused core force. I must point out that there is a very nice, seemingly open field in the north, and you actually have those placement areas for units in the north at the start. But please don't go there. First of all, the enemy won't counterattack, and there is a big defensive point there which is pretty difficult to cross, especially for tanks. Definitely advance from the south, through Lille, Ypres, and Dunkirk eventually. Just a slow advance by infantry, crossing rivers, taking towns supported by artillery. Tanks have a secondary role here, but there is plenty of time to take Dunkirk, and you'll see Matildas here, which are extremely painful. What makes this mission interesting, though, is that you have an additional objective for once, which isn't just taking hexes. So you have to destroy the British fleet here, which has 4 torpedo boats and 2 destroyers, meaning that you absolutely have to have strategic bombers in this mission, and definitely not Dornier 17s. Get Junkers 88s or Heinkel 111s, which have a decent naval attack, and just destroy them. You should pretty much, in order to safely destroy all of the enemy ships, you should probably start bombing them around 8 to 10 turns before the end of the mission. This way you'll take them all. Why should you do this? Because in one of the subsequent missions, i.e. Paris, there will be no British units if you do. British units there are pretty tough, including Matildas, including heavy infantry and engineers. Please get rid of them. So if you're going to go to Paris after these 4 missions, please choose Belgium and Dunkirk. Also, as you advance through Lille, Ypres towards Dunkirk, don't forget that you have forces at Calais. You have an airfield there for your strategic bombers and for destroying those fighters out there. You don't have many ground troops there, but they're still pretty good for harassing the enemy there, and they're sufficient for taking those little villages west of Dunkirk. So, with all of this in mind, we can summarize this a little bit. As you have seen, Sedan, given the trick that I've found, Sedan is somewhat easier and doesn't require you to change any of the core forces, and is probably better if you plan to advance in Dijon. Belgium is more interesting. It's only a little bit more difficult, but it's more interesting in terms of the core force, because you'll have to change it, and the slightly different objective, because you'll have to destroy the enemy ships. Plus, if you intend to go to Paris, which I believe is a more difficult mission than Dijon, you will have to destroy those ships, because with the British forces, Paris is really, really difficult. The prestige you can get from the flags in both of these branches is more or less the same, as you can see, and this is up to you. And now a little joke to end the day. What happens when a tiger meets a Matilda? A cat fight. Night!